The most viral card component right now is the one used by Evervault on their customers page, and in this beginner-friendly tutorial we'll fully rebuild it in CSS. Along the way you'll learn to recreate this hover effect, reveal encrypted text, and display a mixed gradient using industry best practices in CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Regarding CSS, you'll learn about variables, aspect ratio, mixed blend mode, mask image, pointer events, pseudo elements, responsive variables, and media queries, and the scale property. In a nutshell, everything you need to flex on your resume. To follow along with this project, open up your editor. I'm using Cursor for this one, so come fight me if you don't like this choice, and install the live preview extension, then pull up a terminal session. First things first, we want to set up and link our project files. For this, I run touch index.html, index.css, index.js in my terminal, followed by code index.html to create our three files in the current directory, and then open the HTML one. Next, I close the terminal and type an exclamation mark followed by enter to make use of the Emmet abbreviation for generating the HTML5 boilerplate. I'm doing this to feel like a 10x HTML developer. Now, I add two links, one to the external CSS file named index.css for styling, and another one to the external JavaScript file named index.js. This way, the JavaScript file will be loaded after the HTML is parsed due to the defer attribute. Every once in a while, I press Command or Control if your parents are not rich in combination with the S key. For most people, this will save their file. For me, it will format it using another extension called Prettier, because I love being special. Before we go ahead with creating our HTML skeleton, let's take a second to figure out our live server and get it up and running. Let's type our beloved hello world in an H1 element and give the show preview button in the top right corner a press. This preview window will update on every file change, which will come in handy once we get into the CSS in a bit. But for now, let's add a div with class track. It gets a child div with class wrapper, which then itself gets a child div with class card. Our card will itself have different elements like an image, gradient, letters, and corners. But how do we keep getting away with consistent classes? Well, a rather famous computer science quote from Phil Carlton goes like this: "There are only two hard problems in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things." And because of that, we need to make use of a methodology smarter people than I invented to come up with consistent class naming. It's called BEM and stands for block element modifier. A block encapsulates a standalone entity that is meaningful on its own. In our case, it's the div with the class of card. Elements are parts of a block and have no standalone meaning. In our case, it's the image, gradient, letters, and corners elements that we need to nest within our card div. Therefore, we need to apply a modifier that itself is just a flag on a block or element. So to our image, gradient, letters, and corners elements, we append the block name card followed by two dashes. This signals belonging of other elements to our card block using modifiers. That's it. And before you go nuts in the comments, yes, I know that the corners div is not nested with any card, and yes, I know that it still gets applied the modifier signaling belonging, but I'm just a nobody online, so what do you need to care anyway? Moving on, set corners div gets 4 children because our card is a square, and as of my recollection, this shape has 4 corners. Last but not least, since we defined our div with the image class, let's give it an img element referencing an image of our choice. You can pick whatever picture you want here, but my mom recommends a funny picture of a cat. Yet I'll go with the Evervault icon in an SVG format, since these are the guys I'm ripping off their creativity, so it's only fair if they get something in return. Now, enough yapping about hypertext markup language. Next up is my favorite hipster garbage toy programming language, JavaScript, which we'll use for creating an interactive effect on the card div, which after that we will beautifully style in CSS. Let's see if I'm smart enough or end up disappointing my parents even more than when I told them I won't move out of their basement because look, I'm a programmer now. We define a string called chars containing all lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and digits 0 to 9 because this will soon be used to generate random strings. Before that though, we define a function random char that returns a random character from the char string. Math.random generates a number between 0 inclusive and 1 exclusive as in only cool people allowed, just like my subscriber base. Then we multiply it by chars.length, which gives us a number between 0 and the length of chars. Math.floor rounds down to the nearest integer, giving a valid index for the string. Now we define a function random string that returns a string of random characters of the specified length. Array.from array length creates an array with length undefined elements. .map random char replaces each element with a random character, and .join combines the array of characters into a single string. Yes, this is copied from Stack Overflow. Now we select the first element in the DOM with the class card and assign it to the variable card. And we also select the first child element of card with the class letters and assign it to the variable letters. Handle on move takes an event E, which can either be mouse or touch. Card.getBoundingClient rect gets the position and size of the card element relative to the viewport. X and Y calculate the mouse or touch position relative to the top left corner of the card. Letters.style.setProperty X and Y set custom CSS variables on the letters element, which can be used in CSS for effects that we will touch on in a bit. Letters.innerText equals random string 2000 sets the text content of letters to a new random string of 2000 characters every time the event fires. Last but not least, we add an event listener to the card element that calls handle on move whenever the mouse moves over the card, and then add another event listener to the card element that calls handle on move with the first touch point whenever a touch movement occurs. Is this memory efficient? No. Does it look cool? Yes, so what do I care? But to fully let the shit hit the fan now, we throw in a little cascading style sheet. So if that's not worth a thumbs up, well, I guess it's not worth a thumbs up. Beginning with the pseudo class selector root that targets the highest level element in the DOM, which is the HTML element, we define some variables here, making them available everywhere. Background RGB defines a custom property for RGB color values. Notice that it's not wrapped in RGB, it's just the numbers. This allows us to reuse the numbers in different contexts. Border uses another variable inside an RGB function, and the /20% sets the alpha opacity to, well, 20%. This is a newer CSS color syntax that these actually guys call RGB with alpha slash notation. Logo size calc var card size asterisk 0.3 uses the calc function to compute a value based on another variable. This is powerful for responsive design and sounds cool when said out loud. For styling the body, we use background that uses the custom property for the background color. A height of 100 VH makes the body as tall as the viewport. A display of flex and justify content center centers its children horizontally, and an overflow set to hidden prevents scroll bars if content overflows. The font family of Node or Sans and fallback font of sans serif sets the font if you didn't already conclude Sherlock. The universal selector is not a cult but a thing in CSS that targets all elements. We use it with box sizing of border box to change the box model so that the padding and border are included in the element's width and height, which is more intuitive for layout. And we remove the default spacing by setting margin and padding to 0. Now we've got track and wrapper for our layout classes. Track is a flex container. We vertically center its children and give it this width of the variable we defined earlier for consistent sizing. Wrapper is a full width container which we position relative for absolutely positioned children. Now card is a flex container which is centered both ways. We give it an aspect ratio of 1. This ensures the card is always square so that its width equals its height. This is a newer CSS property that you can use to flex offline or on YouTube like I'm doing right now. The border radius rounds the corners, the overflow set to hidden clips children that overflow the card's bounds, and the cursor of pointer shows a hand cursor on hover. The image is a flex container for the image with a high Z index so it appears above other elements. The direct child img uses the variable for sizing. And now let me cook. Gradient is a full size overlay with a radial gradient background. Radial gradient creates a circular color transition. A mixed blend node set to darken blends this layer with the layers below, darkening the result. This is an advanced compositing technique for cool kids. Pointer event set to none makes this layer ignore mouse events so you can click through it. A Z index of 3 ensures it's layered below the image. Now card letters is absolutely positioned to cover the card. It gets an opacity of 0 which hides it by default. We then transition its opacity over 400 milliseconds because this animates the opacity change. The mask image set to radial gradient is another advanced property. It uses a gradient as a mask so only part of the text is visible, creating a spotlight effect. The mask center is controlled by X and Y, which we set in JavaScript earlier if your rotten brain can remember. This concerns the mouse position. A scale of 1.03 slightly enlarges the letters, and on hover opacity 1 fades the letters in. Now this media query applies styles for screens smaller or equal to 600 pixels wide by reducing the card size and border radius for better fit on mobiles. Just because I can, let's add some decorative borders. These pseudo elements create vertical lines on your left and right of track. A translate set to 0% and -50% vertically centers the lines, and border left and border right use the custom border style. And this stuff creates horizontal lines at the top and bottom of wrapper. Now corners is an overlay for decorative corners. Each corner is a vertical line and its after pseudo element is a horizontal line, together forming a plus shape. The nth child selectors position each corner in a different spot. And that's pretty much everything you need to know to flex your front-end dev skills on your resume. Congratulations! And if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and check out my newsletter for more advanced content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.